create cost-effective and durable wrenches, workers in Pakistan take discarded ships' anchor chains and cut them up. Through a simple process in their small workshop, the chains are transformed into large hexagonal socket wrenches. These piles of discarded anchor chains become the workshop's primary raw material. Because each link in the anchor chain is interconnected, the first step is to cut it using acetylene oxygen to separate the entire chain. Given the chain's heavy weight, to facilitate moving and dismantling the stack, workers cut it into sections, each consisting of 5 links. When making large socket wrenches, preventing socket cracking is crucial. Therefore, using anchor chain for press forging will make the wrench more durable. Since wind cannons, pneumatic bolt tightening tools, are relatively rare in Pakistan, this type of wrench is an essential tool for repair shops. After the worker skillfully cuts the chain using acetylene oxygen, the anti-tangling pole section in the center needs to be separated with a direct hammer blow. However, the chain at this stage still does not meet the requirements for further processing. To ensure each socket has a consistent weight, workers first measure and mark the chain. The primary goal is to determine the length of material needed for the socket. After accurately marking the surface with chalk, acetylene oxygen is used to cut the chain down the center, allowing the straight segment of chain to be completely removed. Once the outer shape is straight, this segment can be directly heated and stamped into a socket. Meanwhile, the curved section of the chain will be simply weighed before being heated and reshaped into a cylinder with a uniform outer diameter. Because manual cutting isn't always precise, each small segment is briefly weighed before the formal forging process to ensure there's no material wastage due to excessive length. After a meticulous selection process, all the raw materials are then simultaneously fed into the heating furnace. The raw material must reach the correct temperature in the furnace before forging can take place. Because they use heavy oil as the heating fuel, with the help of a high-power blower, the raw material is quickly heated to a high temperature. At this time, workers use a high-pressure forging machine to drill a hexagonal hole in the center, which determines the size, number, of the socket. After quick and skillful initial shaping, the finished socket blank is then taken to a lathe for surface treatment. While burrs won't affect the use of a wrench, a smooth, even cut will create a more visually pleasing surface. After the socket surface was polished to a shine, the worker then welded the socket to the half shaft, the used axle. This was because their wrenches lacked replaceable sockets, so they had to be welded together with a shank extension. After a quick and thorough gap welding, the basic shape of the wrench was revealed. Because uneven weld ridges can be visually unsightly, the worker then reinstalls the wrench in the lathe chuck. The goal is to trim the weld ridges evenly to ensure a more natural transition at the weld joint. However, the wrench is clearly unusable at this stage. In order for the wrench to turn the bolt, the extension shaft, made from a used half shaft, needs to be bent to the required shape. Because the used half shaft is a very hard material, the center section to be bent must first be heated and annealed, softened, to reduce its hardness. After heating, pressure from a hydraulic press is used to bend the extension shaft to the required 90 degrees. Since the entire surface still had a lot of rust, to prevent the wrench from rusting further, they then coated the entire surface with anti-rust oil. This not only improved the appearance, but also camouflaged the surface. Thus, the socket wrench made from used anchor chain was completed. What do you think of the craftsmanship of these Pakistani workers?